Hello. Right, I'm James Smith. Hi, thank you very much for having me. And I am here to talk about something I'm involved in called Clean Web UK. You can find me on Twitter as Floppy, because James Smith was taken, obviously, and Clean Web UK as well. I'm a developer. I've been a developer for 15 years or so, through various different projects, through traditional software, C++ stuff, through to the fun world of the web, and been playing around with the web for 5-6 years or so, something like that. And about the same time I got interested in environmental issues and things as well. So I've gone through a succession of different organisations since then. I've worked for my own project called the Carbon Diet. I've worked for a charity called Green Thing, who were trying to use advertising and marketing techniques to get people to live more sustainably. And a company called Amy, which was all about creating APIs for developers to use to do carbon stuff, carbon calculation and things. And I'm currently working at the Open Data Institute, which is fun. So I'm here to talk about this Clean Web word, which is definitely a word, but nobody really knows what it means. But first of all, and this bit is short, some context as to why I'm doing this in the first place. We're in a bit of trouble. I love this picture. We've got a whole bunch of problems globally that we really need to deal with, a lot of challenges, a lot of really difficult things. We are hitting quite a few limits at the moment. So this is a thing called planetary boundaries. There's a whole load of things people have worked out that if we go too far, then we'll be in some serious trouble. These are the ones they think. This is the nitrogen cycle. That's what to do with growing plants and things. That's not looking good. Biodiversity loss is pretty bad, and climate change, which you hear about most, is pretty bad, but not quite as bad as the others yet. But what we're looking at is the way we're going at the moment. We are running a little bit out of control. We're not managing our resources properly. We're letting things run out of control. We're not sort of garbage collecting behind ourselves. And as developers, we know what happens when you don't do that. Everything's fine. It's all going fine. There's no problem with my program. What happened? We don't want to blue screen the planet. So we need to start thinking about actually, managing our resources properly, as we do as developers. In case you're wondering about whether all this is worth doing anything about, you hear a lot of controversy about whether climate change is happening or not happening or anything like that. This is the scientific view. The black is yes, the red is no. We know this about as well as we know anything. If anybody tells you that it's not happening, they're wrong, fundamentally. So I'll come back to Clean Web now. That's kind of the preachy bit out of the way. There's no more of that. Now you've probably heard the word clean tech. This is using technology for more sustainable technologies. Wind, solar, things like that, all sorts of stuff. And Clean Web is kind of part of that, and it's where clean tech meets cloud computing, where sustainability ideas meet social media, and it's using the power of the web to make change in the way that we live. And the cool thing is that here in the UK we've been leading the world in this, and we are leading the world in this. Since at least 2005, there are projects going back that far. There are smaller projects going back even earlier, back to about 2001, and that's a pretty long time on the web. So there's been loads and loads and loads of stuff going on in this area, all over the place. But it's all been very disconnected. So there are lots of developers out there who are interested in this stuff, who are working on this stuff in different organisations, but none of them know each other. None of them are, it's very easy to think you're the only person working on a problem in something like this, unless you can talk to other people. And that is where Clean Web UK come in. We are a network of developers, a bit like the digital networks and things like that, that are based around this idea of trying to use the web for sustainability and so on and so forth. And it's trying to mobilise developers to build a better future. You know, we're creative people. We enjoy a challenge. We like a problem, and it's a great problem and a really big challenge. So it ought to be really good fun. It's not always, but you know, it's something to really get your teeth into. And we're trying to get people to. I work in Shoreditch, and Shoreditch is full of people building pointless apps. You know, you can't sit in a coffee shop without somebody talking about their new coupon website. Could we please harness that creativity and really do something important? Because there's some really important stuff to do out there. So we're trying to inspire people to do this. And we are now part of a global movement. So the UK's been leading this for the last few years. It's spreading now. The states have woken up and gone, oh, here's the thing. We should do that. And we're sort of over here going, we've been doing that for a while. There's lots of interest across Europe. This is actually the places that we know events have run around this idea. And this was in September, so this is actually quite out of date. We've now got some over here in Taiwan and China, Japan. There's interest all over the place. Singapore as well. So there's a lot of interest in the places where there's lots of developers to do this kind of thing. And so what we do is we build communities. We, as you know, we learn from each other and you come together. You can do a lot more the more people you know. So there's various ways we're doing that. First is meetups. We're running, our biggest meetup is the Clean Web London meetup, which we run every month. We do things like go to the pub, which is fun. Though we've actually moved on from this, and we used to get 30, 35 people coming to the pub of an evening, but we now run talks each month, and we're getting 50, 60 on now, so people are much more interested in coming and seeing a talk, unless it's this one. And we've got almost 294 members in the group, so it's really growing. And this is in a year. We've gone from nothing to about 300. I was really hoping it'd be 300. And we run lots of interesting events. So the big one we ran back in September was this thing called Ignite Clean Web. And has anybody been to an Ignite event? They're basically lightning talks. The Petra Kucho is another. It's basically the same thing. This is the O'Reilly brand of it. And it's a series of lightning talks. Everybody gets 5 minutes and stands up on stage, and they get 20 slides, and the slides move on by themselves, which is wonderfully fun, because not a single one of these people didn't say, oh my god, my slides changed. So I'm quite glad to have control of them tonight. And we had a huge range of different things. So we had businesses coming and presenting their stuff, we had people presenting their own personal projects, we had open source projects, we had commercial things, we had non-profits, all sorts of stuff. So it's a wide range of business models that come into this. But they were all fascinating, and they're all online. You can go and watch the videos there. There's some really good ones. Apart from that, ignore that. And we run talk nights every month as well. So we've run talks on clean clouds, which I'm going to come back to in a bit, about open data and using that for sustainability, so using government information and things like that for building your applications and things like transport apps, for instance. We're going to run one on public policy, which is probably more interesting than it sounds, and then we're going to run one on games, which is probably less interesting than it sounds. But yeah, that should be fun. Oh, lost control here. And we're not just in London, because I don't live in London, and I hate the fact that everything's in London. So we've got one starting up in Scotland. It's got about 25 people in it at the moment, and they're growing. We tried to start one in Brighton, but we didn't have time to put into it, so that's got 8 people in it and hasn't met yet, but it's always looking for more people. And then we might actually get together. And more to come. We want to push this outside London, because most people doing things aren't there. There's a hell of a lot more people outside. So, another aspect of it is hack days. A lot of those pins in the map were hack days that have run around the world on this sort of subject. We ran one here in London last January called the London Green Hackathon, which was, I was working for Amy at the time and organised that. We had about 90 developers coming together, actually not developers, 90 developers, designers and sustainability experts coming together, forming teams, building fun stuff, ranging from somebody who wanted to get carbon calculation embedded into Excel, so you just type it into a spreadsheet, ranging through to somebody who hacked an energy dashboard onto the screensaver of your Kindle, so you just pick it up and you know what you've been using. Through to some more entertaining ones, things like some real-time displays of things that are happening in the building and stuff like that. So there's a lot of variety, some hardware hacks and all sorts of things. That was really, really good fun. They're tiring. And there have been a number of other ones since. So we've been involved in a hack day called Off the Rails in September, which was all about rail data. So we had people from National Rail there telling us, how to use their APIs, which were tedious, but still. And we had a load of train spotters there as well. There was loads of people who are not actual train spotters; they're electronic train spotters, so they could look at the data. I was working on something and I said, oh no, this looks wrong. That's a strange code. He said, oh no, that's the such and such going all the way across the country. It takes 4 hours. And no, that's right. That's good. You knew that from a 6-letter code. My God. But it was really useful. We were trying to make a Foursquare for trains, so you could check in on your train. Nearly worked. Wine for Food was about redoing food systems, and then we were involved in the Open Knowledge Festival in Helsinki, where we ran another hack day there. Again, getting lots of people together. So lots of sort of engagement in different events. But the most important thing we're doing is making friends, allowing people to make friends. Because, there's nothing that's quite as inspiring as spending the evening in a pub with a whole bunch of people who agree with the kind of thing that you're trying to do when you spend all day surrounded by people who probably don't. So it's quite good. That doesn't come out well at all. But anyway. So it's all about building community. But I mean, the obvious question is, can we actually make a difference? We want to get more and more developers doing this. We're trying to get them in the community, trying to get them involved. But can they actually do anything at the end of the day? Can we really, really make a difference? I did a talk in 2008 at a conference called Geek Kyoto, called Can Software Save the Planet? And it was very pretentiously titled. And that was intentional, because actually the punchline at the end was no, we can't. We can help a bit. That's, we can do some stuff. But we can't, create clean energy, we can't pull carbon out of the air, we can't, we can't grow organic food for you with software. That's weird. Yeah, that was wrong. Because now, whenever someone writes a bit of code, a line of code, that helps somebody save some energy in their home, right? Helps them get insulation or something like that, they're turning off some of this. It's making an actual difference. Every time they get someone to public transport, instead of taking their car, they're taking one of these off the road. Where actually, with the software, we can use the cleanest, greenest power source we have, which is not to use it, and we can really help people do that. So, every time you get somebody buying food locally instead of imported from some far-off country, you're emptying a container ship. So it's real difference. And these are some of the companies and projects that are some of the sort of the stars of our group, certainly. I mean, there's many more in the States and whatever, but these are some of our favourites. This is Loco 2. I enjoy going on the train. It's a nice place to work. That's good. But it's hard enough to buy a ticket through to Milton Keynes, let alone go on holiday on the train. But what if it was easier? So these guys have done a massive job of integrating all the booking systems across Europe, all the timetabling, all that stuff. They've scraped all the information, shoved it all together into a booking engine, and they've made something that's basically as simple as EasyJet. So you can go on there, you can say, I want to go to Italy on this day, and you get your price. The prices aren't lower than EasyJet yet, but once this stuff is usable and the things are in direct competition, then the market can do its magic. So this I really like. This is another one called Sustaination. They connect together food producers and other businesses retailers, thank you, locally. So the idea is there's some farm growing something in the middle of Sussex, and there's a shop that wants to sell it, but they don't know they're there. So they're building. They describe it as kind of a LinkedIn for food, and that means not only can you see that they can find each other, but you can go and see where the food came from, which at the moment is quite appealing. People are worrying more and more about where their food comes from, especially at the moment. And if one thing comes out of this horse business, it'll be that people think about where their food comes from. And just by using technology, I can go to a shop somewhere, I can check in, and I can add it in Sustaination, and it'll send them an email saying somebody wants you to do this. So they have this kind of viral thing going on as well. So this is really nice. They're doing some fantastic stuff. This is a company called Homely. We are homely.com. It's a huge problem about retrofitting homes in this country. They're all very leaky and old, but it's a real big problem to get them all done. We have to retrofit one home every minute until 2050 to actually be able to hit the targets that we want to hit.
What does retrofit mean?
Sorry, good jargon. Sorry. Insulate. Installing insulation, making them more energy efficient, basically. You can build new homes that are energy efficient, but most homes aren't new. So there's a massive problem with this. A lot of people are interested in doing it, but they're put off because they think it's difficult, or they don't know quite what will be involved. So Homely are connecting people together. They're showing people how to, what they can do for a start, which surprisingly a lot of people don't know. And then they can read stories from people who've already done those same things, and ideally people in the same sort of area. So you can relate to someone, you get a human story about, actually this wasn't that difficult, or that bit was okay, this bit was a bit awkward, and that's how we got around it. So alleviating that fear up front is really important, and then they connect you together to people who can do it for you. So removing those barriers that stop people doing this stuff is really important. This is Amy, which is the company I used to work for, but now they have a lowercase name and a different logo and a different business model. And they are now mapping the environmental impact of every business in the UK and giving them a score, so that you'll be able to see who you're dealing with, what your sort of supply chain looks like, and they've got lots and lots of people interested in this. Should be launching sometime soon, they keep promising me. And so that's quite interesting, because I'll come back to the idea of carbon risk a bit later on. But they're trying to quantify that, which is good. It's taking sort of the financial approach to the whole thing. And this is carbon culture. They do carbon saving for workplaces, things like that. So they put in systems that they need to measure everything, and measure power usage and so on, and then they use social methods and optimising work environment, things like that, to help people save energy and to give them rewards when they do. So they make people feel good about it. And this really works. They've got this installed across a whole bunch of government buildings. Half of Whitehall is running this stuff. And they do great things. You have little reward schemes, so when you save this much, then you can have a thing. But also, one of the ones I really liked was they had the idea of work snugs, or I forgot what they're called, because that's something else. But if you're working late into the evening, as a lot of us do, you've got a huge building with about 5 people in it. But actually, if they all got together and went and sat somewhere nice for the evening, with nice lighting and a comfy chair, then you turn off the rest of the building. And they save a substantial amount by doing that. So connecting information together, which is what we do, can really make a difference. This is Carbon Map. This is the last sort of example, and this is very much a computer science problem applied to getting some information across. This is a thing that distorts the map of the world based on what's based on emissions or various other things, actually based on population and so on. And it's fascinating to play with. It animates nicely and it looks good and it's fun to use. So it's engaging. It's interesting. And obviously it has some great stats in it, like Japan uses as much as the whole of Africa. So, revisiting my question, can software save the planet? Like I say, I was wrong. Now I say, hell yes, it can. Absolutely. And I'll go further than that now. I think using the web and software is the only thing that we can actually do fast enough to turn around the problem in the time that we've got, because we don't have long. And the only thing we can scale quick enough and change behaviour with quick enough is stuff like web technologies. Obviously there's a whole lot of other stuff to do as well. The infrastructure that needs to change and so on, but we can scale so much faster than them. So we can really take the edge off. And if you need an example of how powerful the web is for behaviour change, you only have to look a few years ago. I mean, if I'd said to you a few years ago, 10 years ago, whatever, in 10 years' time, everybody will be posting what they're doing on Facebook the whole time, and not on Facebook, on the internet the whole time, and all their pictures and things like that. You'd think I was mental. But it's changed attitudes. It's changed attitudes to privacy, and it's done that by being fun and by being scalable. And obviously not everybody's going to be Facebook, but there's a few. And this is the problem, actually, because we need more of this. We need a lot more. We have so many problems to solve, and so many different ways in which we could do it, that we have to try everything in the hope that if we try 1,000 things, and I mean the numbers are probably even bigger than this, if we try 1,000 things and get 100 decent ideas out of it and 10 businesses and one that really scales and makes a difference, we have to try all those to get to that one that might help. So we need more and more and more experiments, more and more things being tried. So, cancel my slideshow here. There's some things you can do to take action on this stuff. I mean, if you're interested in this and want to actually try and make a difference, what can you do tomorrow, next week, next year? What are the steps? Well, there's a really interesting one you can do tomorrow. And that is find out where your code runs. As a developer, you don't necessarily think about it. In these days of cloud computing and all that sort of stuff, you just send it out there and it works, and that's fine. And there's a big myth around cloud computing that it's nice and green because it's all efficient and stuff, but it's not true. Cloud computing is not necessarily better. If you run, it all depends on where you run it. If you run your stuff on a cloud if you live in France, mostly powered by nuclear power, right? Your electricity is very low carbon. If you send all your stuff into the cloud and you run it in Dublin, it's substantially worse. So, just because it's efficient doesn't mean it's sustainable. Cloud computing is going to be 4% of global emissions by 2020, and that's what we have control over in the decisions that we make. You think you can't make a difference beyond yourself, but those are decisions that we make, we decide. And one M1X large AWS server has the same environmental footprint as a person in the UK, about 10 tonnes a year, which is insane. We have a whole load of those running. That'll add up quite a lot. So it's all about where the power comes from. And there's one of the companies that's involved in our group is this company called Mastodon C, and they're a big data processing company, but they do it all in a sustainable way. And at the Hack Day that we ran last year, they built this, and this is their carbon dashboard for all the data centres. Not all the data centres, a lot of data centres around the world, a lot of the most popular ones. And they rate them all, and they show you exactly what the cost is of running your stuff in those places. And it's enormously variable. You know, you've got Hong Kong. I mean, the Singapore's so far down you can't even see it. It's, you know, it's horrendous. Right up to some really good ones. A few of our favourites. We have Rackspace here in London, which is here in London. Sorry, very used to doing that. We have Rackspace in London, and they're powered by the wind because they buy renewable certificates from the UK grid, and that's about as good as you can get while being connected to the grid in the UK. And if it makes Greenpeace happy, then that's fine by me. This time, not always. This one's really cool. This is Infinity in Martlesham. They've got a data centre. Martlesham's in Suffolk by the big BT labs, so they've got an enormous bandwidth connection. And they run on crop waste from the farms around. The entire data centre runs on waste from the farms in the area. They have anaerobic digesters, they take all the stuff and they produce biogas out of it, and then they power a data centre. It's absolutely amazing. It's empty because nobody wants to use a data centre that's outside London. But you can start asking for this stuff because it is out there. You can start demanding it. My absolute favourite is this. This is Green Cloud. And Green Cloud is so cool. Green Cloud's in Iceland. And Iceland, the entire country runs on magma. So, you know, how cool. My servers run on volcanoes. It's amazing. The really cool thing about Green Cloud, I mean, it's absolutely zero carbon. It's just, you know, that's why Iceland is just, they just don't produce any energy emissions at all. And the nice thing about it is it's EC2 compatible. So if you're running stuff on EC2, you can pick it up and you can go to Iceland and just drop it down. It's probably not that easy, but I let the DevOps guys do that. But it's compatible, so you can, you know, you can use it. So this is really cool. And you can see, you know, Green Cloud right there up the top, London Rackspace there. We haven't got Infinity on here, but it would be up the top. But you know, there are plenty of other choices. You know, if you're deploying stuff on AWS, the default is Virginia down here because it's really cheap and it runs on coal, and they've got loads of it. We kind of don't want them to burn it all though. So that's the default. So there's lots of other choices. You know, you can pick Oregon, AWS in Oregon, same price. It's going to give you about the same latency, and it's, you know, a third of the impact. And that's a different line in the config saying run it over there instead of here. So there are some really simple choices you can make. And the big lesson is don't use AWS US East. It's a default, and it's a really bad default. So you can do that tomorrow. You can find out where it is and move it around. If you're using co-located servers, you can find your data center and ask them where their power's coming from. You know, you can apply pressure. You're the consumer. You can ask for what you want. Next week, what can you do after that? In a slightly longer term, think about your clients. The people that we work for all have parent businesses. They do, you know, various things, and they're all dependent on the system. So, and the system runs on fossil fuels. So they have this subsidy underneath them that's going to become a problem. So, what are they? How are they at risk from this stuff? How will they operate when they can't do that anymore? When they don't have this? If they have to avoid using fossil fuels, how is that going to change their business? And how can you help them to do that? And think beyond the sort of the immediate short-term view. I think we want to inspire people to just take a longer-term view. You can still do the same stuff, just look slightly further ahead. Because this idea of the carbon bubble, which I mentioned earlier, we have this sort of breakdown diagram. Up to 2000, we released about 1,000 gigatons of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. Since 2000, we've released 380, which is a decent proportion of the whole rest of human history. We can safely release 500 more to stay below 2 degrees, right? Since 2000, ever. And we have this much. We have 745 gigatons in just the biggest fossil fuel companies. and 2,000 gigatons more. This is enough to make everything. Just. So we really don't want them to burn that. At some point, this is all considered an asset at the moment. So there are companies that have this on their balance sheet. Now, when they can't do that anymore, you know, when you have stuff on your balance sheet that's worthless, that kind of sounds a lot like a subprime crisis a few years ago. And at some point somebody's going to notice. So how can we navigate that? How can we help people navigate that? Work out what they can actually get away with. This is what we do a year, by the way, and that fills that in 13 years. Next month, what can you do next month? Well, we're running an event, so come to that. Talk to other people. There's a community growing, there's a movement growing that's interested in stuff. You know, you're not alone doing it. Join a meetup or start one, or get one off the ground in Brighton, for instance. Share ideas, talk to other people, learn from their mistakes. You know, I've seen the project that I did 5 years ago, I've seen so many people try the same thing again. And if I could have got them at the beginning, I would have told them stuff. I would have said, don't bother with that bit because it's not really important. Nobody will use it. So, you know, the really fun thing about this community is we're all trying to do the same thing. So we all learn from each other and we collaborate, which is great. And there are businesses here. There are routes to sustainable businesses that we can do. And build something. Because building things is easy. We've got such incredible tools. If I had the tools I have now and the time I had when I was a student, my God. And then, you know, you never know. Next year, you might just change the world. So I'm going to finish now, because I've probably gone way over time. This is the thing we wrote called the Clean Web Manifesto, and this is something to stick a stake in the ground and say, this is what we think. And you can see this online, you can sign it if you want to. So we know that as a species we're hitting the limits in resources, pollution, and our impact on the natural world. We know that exponential growth in a closed system is dangerous. We know that we must reduce the impact of our society immediately or face widespread systemic failure. As makers and entrepreneurs, our task is to make these constraints work for us and use our creativity to deliver progress without the costs that we previously accepted as a side effect of our work. We have very little time, but we have an incredibly powerful tool at our disposal. We have to apply the power of the web to make change happen at all levels of society, transforming businesses, governments and citizens on a massive scale. So, beginning today, or whenever you see this, we will dedicate ourselves to this. We will work on projects with true meaning that make the future a better place to be, rather than creating illusory short-term value. And we hope you'll join us. We have a hell of a lot of work to do, and we need everybody we can get. We're on the web, cleanweb.org.uk. You can find us on Twitter. We hang around on IRC all the time. We have a mailing list, and we have lots and lots of meetups. And we need more and more people involved. We need everyone involved. We've got a lot of stuff to do, because if we don't fix it, we're going to need some better error code. That's it.